The ChangeOver is back with another episode. This week,
personalization at scale is becoming more and more part of marketing programs. It's really hard to do with disconnected bursts. That's really hard to do with random acts of marketing.
All of these tracks are non-negotiable. To build the proper growth engine that it takes in the current landscape, you need all these things working together, feeding one another. Otherwise, you're going to have gaps. You're not going to be achieving those growth targets that you're hoping for. That's where you're really going to stand out and help compress that overall sales cycle, which your sales team's going to love. They're not only getting better quality leads, but it's a quicker point from them reaching out to closing that sale.
Welcome back to the ChangeOver Podcast. I am Nicole Mertes, COO of Weidert Group, and today I am joined by Frank Isca, our Director of Business Development. We'll be chatting about how companies are stuck in random acts of marketing and what it really takes to dig out and build a scalable growth engine.
I'm excited to talk about this. We've put a big focus on this at Weidert Group as we help our clients evolve.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about this systems thinking approach to the growth engine versus these disconnected bursts of activity. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing across companies right now. I think we're starting to see this pattern, right, happening. Tell us what that looks like. Tell us what triggered this growth engine, the systems thinking approach.
So the pattern is what used to work is no longer working as effectively, or for some companies, not working at all. So it's really exposing some things that maybe if they've been putting off, some kind of core components to their overall marketing strategy, it's now catching up with them. For a while, people were able to kind of follow the typical inbound marketing methodology. It produced traffic. It got people to their sites. They got people to self-identify early so they could nurture them. That's not really the case anymore. And it led us to we need to rethink the old playbook and really think about a new framework.
Of course. So let's talk about the past a little bit before we dive into the growth engine. Can you describe a little bit about what a B2B marketing team looked like in the past year, how they've been operating, what that marketing model looks like today?
Yeah, so I'd say in the past, it was, as we call, random acts of marketing. So lots of campaigns, lots of different activities, launching a campaign or supporting a trade show over here. Oh, sales needs this piece of collateral. Senior leadership wants us to create this presentation deck. It's a lot of busy work. And it's when you step back and look at, okay, what have we done? What results have we gotten? It's hard to pinpoint anything specific other than, we've been really busy. And unfortunately, leadership's still not seeing the growth that they're expecting. Sales is still not getting the number of leads that they're wanting. And that can be frustrating.
Yeah, I think that certainly resonates. I think there's this feeling of we're really busy. We're doing so many things, but they're just not tied together and you're not getting the momentum that you think that you should from all of those efforts. So I think random acts of marketing certainly has its limitations. I think you're going to see some results from that, but it's going to stop as soon as those activities stop. And it's not going to compound over time like it would if you had more of a systems approach. And that's really where our growth engine comes in. What's the framework to really have everything work together? What's the order of operations? What do you need to do foundationally? What do you need to do ongoing so that you really build this asset that compounds and that does build momentum over time, that doesn't just stop when an activity stops. So I think we're seeing more and more of that. And the good news is I think there's a way to move from that kind of disconnected activity to something that's going to be, certainly not as frustrating, but to get better results.
The other piece that buyers are expecting a more personalized buying experience. So we have more data than we ever have had at our fingertips. But if you don't have that organized and done in a structured way, you're going to create more of a mess for yourself. So having the right foundation in place as far as having the right data and a way to tap into it, as you learn about your audience and learn about prospects and new leads, and as you start to engage them in additional ways, having that context to personalize based on where they are in their buyer journey, based on signals and information that they've shared, that's where you're really going to stand out and help compress that overall sales cycle, which your sales team's going to love. They're not only getting better quality leads, but it's a quicker point from them reaching out to closing that sale.
Yeah, absolutely. I think personalization at scale is becoming more and more and more part of marketing programs. It's really hard to do with disconnected bursts. That's really hard to do with random acts of marketing. So that system will enable you to really be able to leverage AI. So That's actually a really good segue into a conversation about a more systems thinking approach to the way that we go about our marketing and sales efforts. Let's dig in and talk a little bit more in the weeds of what that growth engine looks like.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Well, let's start at the top. I think no one will be surprised to hear that there's an order of operations. And we like to think of it in two phases. And the first phase is very foundational. Talk to us a little bit about what you really need to put in place before you turn on that engine. What are those foundational pieces?
So the first category of foundational work is your brand and style foundation. So this is really nailing down, how are we going to talk about our point of difference, our value proposition? Who are we really talking to? So who's our ICP? And within those ICP companies, who are the target personas? And what matters to them? How can we make our point of difference and value proposition connect with what they really care about? And then how does that tailor then into specific messaging? So as you go to market, we know clearly who we are and how we're different, who we're talking to, and really resonating on those pain points or hot button issues that your personas are feeling to make that connection. So you could do all the marketing activities in the world, but if you don't have this foundational piece right, and a lot of companies think they have this figured out, and then we start asking questions, and are they consistent across the organization? They're typically not. So this is a really good opportunity to step back, get this dialed in, and then that's going to feed into everything else within the methodology.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a pretty smart place to start. I think it's a pretty big category too, right? And I think that's something to come back to over time. But does that include things like you talked about ICPs and personas? Does that have a visual component of it as well when you're talking about your brand and your brand foundation?
Yep. So definitely a visual component. Doesn't mean that we need to overhaul and develop a new logo. There might be opportunities to stick with the current branding, but just evolve it. And then how does that going to translate? What are the specific visuals or different color aspects that we're going to use to stand out and get attention in the marketplace? So it's getting those things figured out. So you have the how are we going to talk about ourselves, and then how does that translate into a visual design aspect that is really going to resonate and again help you stand out in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Yeah, this really defines who you are. And it ties back to the express phase of the marketing loop as well, right? So you have this strong foundation with express. And when you're executing using the marketing loop, you're just taking that and taking it one step further to a very targeted campaign, for example, and building upon that brand. So your brand story and your messaging and positioning, et cetera, specific to that campaign that you're working on, for example.
For the loop to work, like we talked about, and that express stage that you just mentioned, the brand and style foundations, that is directly connected. And your loop's not going to get that momentum and motion without doing this very important piece first.
What kind of audience research would be part of this phase? Because I know we do a lot of work there, really important to get this brand story right and messaging right. We really need to base that off of a number of things, but audience research is very important here.
Yes. Yeah, we love this piece. Any new prospect or new client that we talk to about this, they see the value, especially when they commit to it. But it starts with talking to their customers. So we pick, with their help, a good subset of their customer base. And that's one-to-one conversations where we want to understand, what did their buyer journey look like? Was there specific things that stood out to them as they discovered our client, and what helped them make that decision? What are certain considerations they had? Those are all things that help feed into not only our brand and style foundations, but future marketing activities and campaign angles that we can leverage. The other piece, and Chelsea just talked about this in a recent episode, is the use of SparkToro. So SparkToro is a very powerful clickstream data analysis platform, and translate that, it's understanding through data where your best customers, your prospects, are spending time on the web. So once they reach your website, where else are they spending time on a day-to-day basis to get information, to learn? So that could be different social media channels, podcasts that they're listening to, trade media that they're frequently reading or visiting those sites. That's an important aspect to know from an audience research standpoint, where we should be amplifying and putting our message out there.
Right. Yeah. A really good input. I think one of the newest inputs, that is considered when we talk about audience research is just all the data that companies have now too. There's so much data that can be mined, whether that are sales call notes and transcriptions, advisory board notes from meetings. There's just so much data now, and there's an easier way to mine it. And that can be a really great input when you start talking about audience research, so that your brand and style foundation is really hitting the mark.
And HubSpot's continue to do a really good job to have ways to have that data live within your HubSpot CRM, and ways to tap into that, especially with the continued rollout of new AI capabilities in the platform. So yeah, it's an exciting time. If you have the data, there's now ways to harvest and leverage that.
All right. So if the first category in the foundational phase is all about setting your brand and your style foundation, the second one is about setting the strategy, really using the research and insights, if you will, to set strategy for the program and for the work that you're going to do.
Yeah. So that phase is the growth playbook. And this is a strategic plan of what are we going to be doing for those that are in market and those that are out of market that we are trying to get in front of.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit more about what strategies you're setting? What would be included in that?
So within that playbook, we're going to have specific strategies and priorities around search visibility, what our overall content strategy is, and how we're going to promote that content, aspects of how are we going to convert those that are ready to talk to sales and what that handoff looks like. And if they're not quite ready to connect with sales, what does that ongoing nurturing component look like? And then segmentation to make it easier on sales to know who is truly sales ready and maybe who needs some additional time to be nurtured and provided additional information. Mm-hmm. And then reporting. How are we going to be looking at all the different data components of what we're doing and prioritizing what those main KPIs are, so we can apply that learning and actually use that versus just chasing data and lots of numbers.
Right. I think that strategy can take many different shapes and forms based on the situation and based on the company, the client. It could be ABM strategy, for example. I think the point here is that I think we see a lot of companies wanting to jump right to doing a campaign, for example,
Yes.
And without the right strategy in place and really thinking through how we're going to go about that and where we should be focusing our efforts, because I haven't met anyone with an unlimited budget yet. So if you don't have an unlimited budget, how do you focus? Where do you focus? When there are a million things that you can do, what are the things that you are going to do? What makes the most sense? What do you prioritize? And how are we going to go about that? So laying that foundation in terms of strategy, I think is really important here.
Absolutely. That's going to get you from point A to point B much more quickly, maximize your spend. Just know exactly what you're doing before you go to market.
And then the third category, if you will, in this foundational phase is I think this one is a really important one. It's becoming increasingly important. And I think without it, it's going to be nearly impossible to do the great things we can do with marketing today. And that is data and tech enablement, right? So really taking a look to make sure that the data that you have is clean and unified and connected.
Yes, absolutely. So this has to be a focus. We're gathering and collecting more data now than ever before. So if you're not keeping that maintained and have proper hygiene there, having ways to tap into that data and actually apply it and learn from it, making sure just your overall CRM is functioning. There's no friction there as far as marketing and sales alignments. This takes continued focus and effort. You can't just be a set it and forget it activity. Mm-hmm. So making sure that you have this optimization phase really built in and you're dedicated to that.
Right. And this needs to come first, right? You're not going to scale something that isn't great to begin with. So if our data isn't clean, if it's not connected, if it's not reliable for personalization, for example, you want to go scale something that is not good to start with. You're just going to make a mess much messier.
well said. You're going to create quite a mess for yourself. So let's get this in order first and save yourself some heartache later.
And last but certainly not least in the foundational phase is your website. So I think in the past, websites could have been thought of as a brochure. I think we're beyond that. I think most people understand websites need to be more than a brochure today. But a website has a huge job, right? And that is always a part of the equation when we're looking at a really strong program and setting up clients for success is, what does that website look like? So tell us about the job of a website today and the things that you're looking at to determine, do we need a complete overhaul of our website for our marketing efforts to work great? Or is it, no, we need to go in and tweak some things and improve on some things?
Yeah, so taking it past that digital brochure into something that looks pretty is, what does each page of the website, what job does it have to do? What are our different specific conversion paths, knowing that users aren't going to just always start their journey on your homepage. A lot of people think about, we're going to funnel them through the homepage and there's these pick your journey kind of avenues. That's not always the case. They could be landing on a tertiary page of your website, depending on what type of campaign you're running. So making sure you have a really clear strategy into the different jobs your website needs to do, knowing there's different entry points and planning for that. How are you going to create personalization? So with all this data, there's ways to create a more personalized experience on your website. Mm-hmm. And then how things get captured as far as new leads, insights that your sales team can leverage. So maybe it's a lead that had gone dormant and all of a sudden they're back on your website. How does that data get fed to your sales team so they can act on that? So we do all these things up front with a website strategy before we even get into building content or creating a design for a site. Is what are the jobs the site needs to do and how are we going to do that from an overall structure standpoint?
I recently heard it websites being compared to a distribution center, right? And that's an interesting way to think about it. That your website is sorting demand, it's routing it, and it's really converting that demand. And that is such an important piece of a successful marketing and sales program. It plays such a large role. I know we've always talked about it too as your best salesperson, right? How is your website being built as your best salesperson today? So definitely a huge part of the foundational piece. All four of these, the brand and style foundation, your strategy and your growth playbook, your data and tech enablement, and your website. Those things are just non-negotiables, right? And there's different levels in which we start, right? You certainly don't have to boil the ocean. There's a starting point for everything, but those are just the key pieces of the foundation for a really strong program that will start. We'll find the right starting point, and then over time we'll come back and improve and iterate and adjust as need be as time goes on. Okay, so track one is the core marketing presence that you build. This is things like building your visibility, building your brand authority. It is taking a look at your website conversion paths, running nurture programs. It's really building all of that educational content and that technical authority that you need in order for everything to work well, right? So this is like the rising tide that raises all the ships. And it's so important in this track one to be doing those kind of activities on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and we typically see companies underfund in this area because it's hard. It takes focus, it takes dedication. A lot of times there's no bandwidth for their team to tap into their subject matter experts to create this type of content, to do these types of activities. So, but to your point, it's so important and it feeds into pretty much everything else that you're going to be doing.
Absolutely. I think this is the great compounder, if you will, of the tracks that we have. If you have this right, everything's going to work really well. So, it is very necessary. So it is frustrating sometimes when you're not able to put a lot of effort or you choose not to put effort into this category because it will impact the results of the others.
I would say for our clients that have adopted an inbound marketing approach and strategy for a while, this is a little bit easier for them because they've already been doing these types of activities as far as content creation and nurturing paths and the things that really feed. this main track. I think it's harder for a new company that's maybe never dedicated themselves to these types of activities.
You're right. And it takes a while to build, right? So really what we're going for here is whether you're a buyer or whether you're that LLM or the search engine, we need to make sure that everyone understands that you are that trusted voice so that before the sale, during the sale, after the sale, all of those things become easier. So this can be very undervalued, but so important to be able to compound results over time. So don't under invest in track one and over invest in track two. Track two is really about campaigns. It's market activation campaigns. So if we're creating that always on, core market presence in track one, track two are the very targeted campaigns, if you will, right?
Yes. So this could be going after a specific vertical market. That's an area of focus for you. So you think about having that topical authority in your core, and then how can we further tailor that for this particular market? Mm-hmm. It could be a specific account-based marketing or ABM campaign where we know we have a subset of companies that are a really good fit. We have the right core components to go after them. So then that's in this area, these marketing activation campaigns, you can be very tailored and very focused, kind of going back to the loop of it's very relevant to them because you're getting laser focused for this particular market, these particular set of companies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think this is the one that comes very naturally to people. Okay, let's do those targeted campaigns, whether we're targeting a specific vertical, whether it's, sometimes it could be something as even preparing for a trade show and a campaign around that. But the key here, I think, is that it is very targeted, right? Where track one is more overarching. So then the third track is another one that I think gets overlooked at times, like track one, and that is operational optimization. Can you tell us a little bit about what would be included in this track and the importance of this track?
Yeah, so this is making sure everything is flowing how it should and there's no friction. So you think about marketing and sales alignments. As we're bringing in new leads and those are qualified, are they getting handed off efficiently to sales at the right step? Or are things getting funneled to them too quickly and they're getting frustrated and sending a lot of leads back to marketing or say these aren't qualified. So that's a really good input and area of learning to, okay, where do we need to adjust some of our automation? What are we seeing from the data that we're collecting and how are we actually applying that data to improve upon the next campaign? What additional ways can we be optimizing our website based on what we're seeing for conversion rates? So some of these activities do fall on those other tracks, but this is like the catch-all of really focused optimization to help your overall growth program run how it should.
Sure. I think some would be familiar with the term revenue operations. I think that's a good way to think about track three. This is the preventative maintenance of the system, right? To make sure everything's a go. Because if you set these things up, if you set up this infrastructure and never come back to it, it's going to wear out. It's not going to have as much impact over time because it does need maintenance. It does need to be revisited. And so, the sales and marketing alignment components, the data hygiene, making sure the automation is optimized, tuning that, a bunch of things could fall into this category just to make sure that the bones of your operation are intact and they're relevant and they're being optimized to help support track one and track two. So all of these tracks, I think, work so closely together. They're all tied to each other. They're always on. And that helps get you to that more systems approach that we're talking about with the growth engine.
So all of these tracks are non-negotiable. To build the proper growth engine that it takes in the current landscape, you need all these things working together, feeding one another. Otherwise, you're going to have gaps. You're not going to be achieving those growth targets that you're hoping for.
We think about a marketing and sales program in terms of those three tracks. It's always running. So advice, Frank, on getting from random acts of marketing, all this disconnected activity, to a growth engine. What advice would you give to listeners about making that transformation?
Yes, I think it starts with some commitment that we're not going to do the old ways of marketing and letting ourselves get pulled in multiple directions, trying to appease leadership and the sales team. They're a core to this. We need their input, but it's really taking a more systematic approach where things are going to compound and work together. This is going to give your team focus. You're not going to have glaring gaps in your overall strategy of what it takes today. And yeah, don't get overwhelmed. You can't boil the ocean. You can't do this all at once. There's a reason that this flows from one step to the next. And it's just, again, making that commitment as a team that we're going to take more of a growth engine mindset and follow this type of framework. And we've seen what this does for companies. It makes marketing fun again. Sales feels better about it because they start to see the compounding efforts where lead gen is more stabilized. It's a less unstable pipeline, and just the organization can feel better about the traction that you're getting and seeing based on real data and how we're applying that data of seeing some more sustainable growth.
Right. I like what you said earlier too about renting results versus creating an organizational asset. And that could be something that's very key. And talking to others in your organization about moving to a different kind of an approach and the benefits of this growth engine versus those random acts of marketing. So I think to really scale, I think a system is needed. Campaigns don't scale. So on their own, and this fragmented, disconnected approach doesn't scale. And I think in this day and age, especially with, as we talked about earlier, all the pressures and AI to do marketing differently, I think this is absolutely the right time to be talking about it and building this out for your organization if you haven't started this journey already. So I like your advice, Frank. It doesn't need to be overwhelming. Yeah. It can all be broken down. And the key today, as it has been for quite some time, is progress over perfection. It's one step at a time, and this is going to be a journey of iterations along the way and continuous improvement. And that's what a system is all about. So I think it's really exciting. It's really fun to watch the power of this kind of a program and what it can really do. And we keep seeing new and new possibilities coming forward every single day. So it's great when you can get to that level of maturity in your marketing and sales program to make some fun things happen.
Yeah, it's fun to see when we're talking to a new client and they realize there's a different path forward than what they've been trying to do in the past. And they can see that clear path of where we're headed and how we're going to create more of that sustainable engine.
All right. Well, Frank, what would you say is the first step in building this always-on engine?
Yeah, I think a good place to start is to audit your foundation. So do you have very clearly stated positioning and a clear messaging hierarchy for your company? Is that aligned between marketing and sales? So is marketing saying something different than what sales is saying when speaking to a new prospect? So you think about the disconnect there of a lead engages with an ad and then they start talking to sales and it's completely disconnected. So start there. Do you have the right infrastructure in place as far as your CRM? We find it shocking still in 2026, talking to some companies, they still haven't figured out the CRM piece, or yeah, we have a CRM, but nobody uses it. So why is that? Let's take some reflection time to get the right systems in place. Has your website been neglected? It looks nice, but it's not strategically aligned with how your buyer is looking to make a decision. And then from there, do you have the right content authority, topical authority that's going to feed into campaigns? Or if you put that on the back burner and a lot of content is stale, it's no longer evergreen. So thinking through some of those things. This is blocking and tackling, starting with that audit and starting to make some key decisions as a team that are going to help move you forward.
And I think the key in all of this is tying all this together, right? That it should all be talking to each other, working together so you get those compounded results. All right. Well, thanks for the great discussion today, Frank, on the growth engine and everything around that topic. We are looking forward to your session at Experience Inbound, and that's coming up very quick, April 28th in Milwaukee and the 29th in Green Bay. And you can go to experienceinbound.com, shameless plug, to get tickets if you haven't already and are interested in learning more about this growth engine approach, as well as so many more topics, 9 breakouts and 3 keynotes. So hope to see you there. And thanks again, Frank.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. It's been a fun discussion.
Thanks for joining us on the ChangeOver Podcast. Remember to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Weidert.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. And are you ready to learn more about today's most effective marketing and sales strategies? Then you need to be at Experience Inbound, Wisconsin's premier marketing and sales conference. Join us on April 28th in Milwaukee or April 29th in Green Bay. Register now at experienceinbound.com. Use code THECHANGEOVER to save $30 per ticket. We'll see you there.